In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Dustin Melbardis, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Chad Robinson. Chad, it's a new year. What's on the menu? New haircut? Grow a beard?
I have to strip some wallpaper, which is always fun. Oh, new paint.
New year, new me, new paint. No, stripping wallpaper, you got to score it first, right? And you chip it away. You've done this before in your house.
Oh, so many times. Apple cider vinegar is what we spray.
There you go.
Everybody's got something that they spray on the walls, and nothing works.
Nothing actually works. Now, I remember in previous house in like 2010, 2011, essentially putting on like a Friends DVD or a Scrubs DVD, essentially a whole season of a show to be like, well, I have to do this entire wall, so I guess I'm just going to watch an entire season and just score and scrape.
I got to hit the gym. I got to hit the wallpaper.
There we go.
Those are the things.
I'm growing my hair out this year. I want to let my salt and pepper out loud and proud. We just recorded with all the rest of our hosts on another show, and our co-host Brian, an incredible just an amount of white in his beard. He looks so distinguished.
But it's symmetrical. I don't know how that happens. Like, I want the villain beard that always looks fake in movies, but he has the perfect symmetrical, like, salt and pepper.
Yeah, it really does look like a Rorschach, like a perfectly symmetrical Rorschach.
In the best way.
In the best way. We love you, Brian. And so it's not just Chad and I. We actually have a guest. It is a returning guest for the third time, coming to you from Houston, Texas. It's your special guest, John Resendez. What are you up to?
Hello. 2025 is a whole bunch of new for me, actually. My wife and I are expecting. My sister just had a baby, so it's going to be a whole new chapter. So excited.
Awesome. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah,
thank you.
The family is growing. The compound is growing. We guys will get you into a castle. We'll get our real estate friends to get you all into a castle.
Yeah, that'd be great.
My daughter actually walked into the room I was watching TV and went right up to me, turned around, and just unleashed a heinous.
Oh, did she?
And it's like, I don't have a son. I have a daughter. Why is this happening to me? So this is something you have to look forward to, John.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and Dustin, my New Year's resolution was get into a castle. So,
all right. Yeah.
Make that happen.
I've been on everybody's wavelength.
There are several weird ones in Texas. I don't know if they count, but there's one where my parents used to live. They do wedding venues out near Lake Travis. Yeah.
Yeah, I had always heard that there's like you're in a really nice place or like a manor or a castle or, something like that. Whenever your address doesn't have numbers, it's just like a location.
Right.
It's just the blank, whatever it is, right?
This dude.
The hilltop or something.
I mean, the dude did it correctly. He built a moat. Like, if I had stupid amount of money, moat is like my number one thing.
Got to keep the riffraff out. The Texas
What are you gonna put in the moat?
I hope agitated sea bass.
Okay.
Well, because they're not in the sea anymore, you put them in a moat, so now they're even more.
They're very upset. Yeah.
I actually drive past one of those castles on Highway 281 going north, like with a high spire at the top of a little hillside. Couple warm up questions here before we kick off the new year, John. Let's look back for a moment. What movie are you most excited to see from 2024 that you haven't gotten to yet?
There's actually a fair amount that have come out that I do want to see, but I think number one on that list is going to be Juror number 2, the Clint Eastwood movie. I believe it stars Nicholas Hoult. I'm not like a huge Clint Eastwood director, fan. It's not like I've watched all of his, but that trailer kind of hooked me. And it came out and went by, and then I was like, oh, I need to see that again.
I've heard nothing but high praise. And the thing is, I feel as if my brain tries to like turn off like old man Clint Eastwood, but if he's going to keep producing bangers, got to watch him.
Yeah, a lot of his movies have this like morally gray question, or you leave the theater or stop watching the movie and feel like was the right thing to do there? There's this question that he's sort of asking, and it's very obvious what it is when you watch the trailer to this movie, but I'll leave that up to everyone to figure out. So,
Chad, same question for you.
It hasn't released just yet, but Nosferatu releases on Christmas Day, which is a very strange thing to do for a vampire movie, but this is Robert Eggers, Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult. So yeah, Willem Dafoe's going to be in it as well. I've heard very,
Stellar
very
casting.
interesting things about this movie, and I'll be there. I will be there. Probably not Christmas Day, family things, but I'll find a way to see this before the end of 2024.
I'm with you. I actually like that it's on Christmas. Just the juxtaposition of dark. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the go to Moana 2 in the drive-in or things like that, which we did that, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the Garfield movie. Like I must watch it. You guys know me; I'm the biggest Garfield head. I'm definitely.
You won't stop talking about it.
It's not the Garfield movie. John Arbuckle makes me sick. It's Wolverine and Deadpool. I missed it, and
it's a good time.
I know it's gonna be, and I just the only time I make for movies is for this show and for you guys. So I will see a new movie. Probably not until summertime, but we'll get to it.
Chad, you've seen you've seen it then, Wolverine, yes. Deadpool. Would you say it's an improvement on 2? Because my wife and I started watching to gear up to go see Wolverine, Deadpool. We hadn't seen the prior 2, and we loved the first one and felt very bleh about the second.
I didn't dig 2 at all for Deadpool, okay. So yeah.
Okay, so it's still worth, yeah. And then it killed our enthusiasm to then go see Deadpool Wolverine. So I guess we'll still see it.
Did it bring you back up though? Like after it was worth it?
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Nice.
I loved it. It had me from the very opening. Like it has one of the best cinematic openings of any movie I've seen in a long, long time.
Wow.
No, that's great to hear. John, what's the last movie you actually did see? It doesn't have to be in theaters.
Last movie I saw not in theaters, actually, also good segue, has one of the best opening cinematic sequences I've ever seen. It's at least in my top 3 is Inglourious Bastards.
Nice.
Had you seen it before?
Yes. It was purely out of every time a clip from that movie comes up, I watched the whole clip, and then I just kind of went, you know what? I'm just going to watch the movie again, right? I kind of fall victim to not watching the movie and watching everything through clips sometimes. And I was like, I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to watch the movie. And then, in theaters, it was actually Heretic, which has Hugh Grant, who's also in what we're talking about today.
We're covering tonight. Yeah, cool. Chad, what's the last movie you saw?
So I've been watching horror Christmas movies, Better Watch Out, Krampus, things like that. And I decided to look up what has Olivia, I think her last name is pronounced DeJong. She's in Better Watch Out. What else has she done? And so that led me to a horror movie called Scare Campaign. And it's an interesting one. It's obviously low budget. It's short. So in Dustin's wheelhouse, he still will never watch this.
How short is it?
76 minutes.
Ooh, mama. I mean, it might be a Christmas miracle.
This didn't have anything to do with Christmas, but it was like a scare tactics type show that goes wrong. And so it's a fun concept, a little bit predictable, but honestly, for what it was, I enjoyed it.
That's good to hear. And you can trust our man Chad with the horror, especially tied to the season. For me, we just wrapped up a long year of watching movies. And I was just bragging to Chad that I actually watched them all this year. I actually watched everything we covered on the show. And the last one I watched was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. See, I had to confirm that movie isn't good.
You're so wrong.
I had to be sure that it deserved the ranking that I gave it. No spoiler. You'll have to listen to that episode to figure out what I gave it. By the way, you'll want to listen to that episode because once again, for the second year in a row, your boy had the most correct list, and the numbers prove it. And I've got the guy who can back it up.
It's true. The numbers don't lie. Dustin came closest to our overall rankings, but that's because he's milquetoast on everything.
No one in the world would say that I am milquetoast.
Actually, this was one year where you actually weren't. You were swinging for the fences. And you had the high ranking.
Wasn't. No, I never am. I'm the chaos gremlin of this show.
Is this a big pride thing for y'all? Good. Is at the end of the year, who gets the closest, or is it just something Dustin made up because he's getting the closest, and the pedestal he's made?
It's become his thing.
Chad puts together some awesome numbers, and I think the thing that I was trying to champion for another host of ours is when your rankings are so different from someone else's too, because that's one of the things that makes the show great is when we're really off from one another. We are covering the new retro. That is this episode, something that is just freshly 10 years old. Chad, what movie are we covering tonight?
We are covering not from the 60s TV show, but from the movie film The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
From 2015. And this is starring Henry Cavill, Armie Hammer, Alicia Vikander, Elizabeth Debicki, Jared Harris, and Hugh Grant. Budget is $75 million. Domestically only made $45 million, but we've got the number $110 million globally. So it did make some money. Still considered part of the list.
Why do we not know this?
This was something that one of our hosts, Russell, he suggested that was it actually this much globally? So I looked at a couple other sources to say, yeah, it did make a little bit more money. It would have been a real bummer. Didn't.
Additional research. Way to go.
You're welcome, audience. It placed 61st in the box office that year. Ahead of it was Sicario, and behind it was Spotlight. Number one movie that year was Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. The IMDb rating for this movie is 7.2. Rotten Tomatoes. Critics' tomato meter is at 68%. Audience score is at 73%. All right, so spy movie, getting kind of middling scores. It did have a winner from the San Diego Film Critics Society for the body of work of Alicia Vikander, which is for this movie, but also for The Burnt, The Danish Girl, and Ex Machina. Ex Machina, very high on a lot of our lists. And I will say there's no AFI distinctions, but it did find itself on a list for the 50th best action movie of all time, which I actually want to come back to during the body of our show. But John, you were the one that presented this on our short list, and I think we were excited to pick this one. What were your background with this movie?
I had a nice day at home. I don't know. This was quite a long time ago. I think I first saw this in 2017, and I remember being home all day, and I watched this movie and another one back to back. And in my head, they're like sister movies, which is The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. They both have this sort of frenemy buddy cop feeling to them, right?
Sure.
They're both retro in that they're set, I think one's in the 70s and this one is in post-World War II. I know that no one has ever heard of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. when I talk to them about it. And I know it didn't perform well and people haven't really seemed to have seen it. And so going into it this time, I was really trying to look for flaws, to be honest. Like, why was this not better received? I enjoy it, but why does no one seem to have seen it?
Right.
It's kind of what I was looking for. Yeah.
I think we've brought it up before on the show, and you and I brought it up in person, which is that it might be the title. We've mentioned it before. Sometimes the title doesn't do your movie any favors. And it seems, if you don't know anything that it has source material, it seems clunky or forced.
Mm-hmm. It's right up there with The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything until the last 10 seconds of the film. Mm-hmm. And even when you find out what it means, you kind of just go, okay. So for a general movie watcher or, a casual movie goer, I don't really see them being enthused by the title at all. I think it definitely hurts it.
Yeah. Another great example from 2024 that we covered on the show was Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. It really affected all of us and affected a lot of people.
It did not. I looked past that. Lizzie looked past that just because y'all can't get over it.
Oh, well, if you look past it, it means you at least recognize that it is an issue.
We talked about it if you listened to the episode, but Darkly, if you're willing to be bold enough to have that kind of ending, and I won't spoil it for many people that haven't seen it, if you're bold enough to do that, I'm going to smile and I'm going to clap my hands. I love that.
Well, tell me about your expectations and your background with this movie, Chad.
So I kind of pair this up with Kingsman. I feel like that's another spy period genre piece. It's different, but it's very flashy as well. For whatever reason, I've only seen half of this movie before. And it started with solo scenes with Victoria when she has spiked his drink. And beat by beat, I could remember everything past that point. I remember nothing prior. So somehow I stumbled on this and got halfway through.
I feel like the first time you saw it, you missed the best half of the film. It's kind of what I felt like. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And so I'm watching this with my wife because I figured this would be a type of movie that she would enjoy. And we did. We had a good time with it. The first half, I looked at her and said, how are they going to screw this up? Because I'm having a great time. And you hold your breath because I just came off of Capricorn 1 and I'm now traumatized. Like, I'm having a great time. This is awesome. Like 4.5-star movie. How is this going to get screwed up? Capricorn 1, we went to the desert, wandered around. Here, I don't really think they messed up too much for me. I had a great time. I feel like people are going to start coming back. I understand Cavill was Superman, but I don't think those movies were popular enough to really draw people to his other works. I think The Witcher has helped a lot, and I think it's particularly going to get women interested in his filmography. I gotta say, other than The Witcher, I didn't see it with Henry Cavill until I watched this movie, and then I'm like, yeah, I get it. He's stunningly handsome, but here he is.
That helps. Yeah.
He is smooth. He is charming.
Yeah, and there's people were talking about him. I think are still talking about him. I'm not sure for Bond, right? And
I can see
this whole movie feels like an audition for him to be Bond in some capacity, or in maybe tonally different from Daniel Craig's, but like in some format, right? You can see it.
But now he's doing Warhammer, which I am happier about.
I'm happier he's there too.
The best part is that it's very clear from people that follow Hollywood or that pay attention to what he says that he's not just picking up these parts. He likes this stuff.
Oh yeah, and I mean he's an Astartes player, so yeah, he is not going to let this happen.
Yeah. Just because he likes it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be good, but it at least it covers up the pitfall of producers and higher up people getting in the way. And at least that being the reason why it isn't good can't be possible.
Right. So I'm not like a Cavill stan, but everything I've seen in him, I really like. I enjoyed the play with Affleck's Batman in that movie, although the other Supermans didn't do it for me.
Why did you say that name?
The hardest part for me, Martha? Wait a minute. Me, Martha, you, Martha. So the thing it's hardest for me is I'm a huge fan of the Witcher books and series and video game series that I actually won't watch the Netflix Witcher, even with Cavill as Geralt of Rivia. For me, I've kind of put that world together how I like. And so hopefully the show is good. Maybe someday I'll watch it. That's not happening, audience.
I mean, Cavill left it because they weren't faithful. So
yeah,
that's not going to help you. I had a good time for the first season, and then I stopped having a good time.
That's exactly where I was with it.
Yeah, maybe I made the smart choice. Well, for me, Cavill, my first interaction with him was with Mission Impossible Fallout. Like that was when I first kind of recognized, ooh, this guy's got something else going for him. He plays August Walker in that very iconic fight scene. That people will bring up the concept of essentially like loading your fists, and that is something that he brought to the table. It was so cool, just especially across action movie guys. I have seen this movie before only once, and John introduced it to me sometime back in 2018, 2019. Went over to his place. He's like, we're going to watch this movie. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll be right over. And I had a blast with it. I was expecting to enjoy it even more this time, having an idea for what their source material was and what they are going for. I was bobbing my head back and forth with sort of the jazzy beats and the disco drums. These were things that I thought, like, the color was great. I was paying attention to fashion. So much about this movie, I feel like it holds up. It'll hold up for a long time, except for the title. It's weird. And we understand that it has the source material, but it just wasn't really something that I believe detracts from its overall success. It probably got in its way a little bit. We're going to talk a lot more about this movie, and we're going to do it after this break. Now, after this break, Chad is going to give a nice detailed plot summary. That means he's going to spoil the movie, listeners. So if you haven't seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E. from 2015, pause us, come back, and then it's time to listen to us. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we are back. This is your last chance, listeners. If you haven't seen from 2015, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., pause us right now. Go watch that movie. We'll be right here for whenever you're ready to listen to us talk about it. Chad, take it away.
In the 60s, the Cold War is in full swing, and ex-con turned CIA agent Napoleon Solo is tasked with extracting Gabby Teller, the daughter of nuclear scientist Dr. Udo Teller, from East Berlin. Solo outwits KGB agent Ilya Kuryakin and escapes with Gabby, only to later be told that he and Ilya must team up to stop Alexander and Victoria from using Udo to build their own nuclear arsenal. Ilya is given the cover of an architect, and Gabby is to pose as his fiancée. Solo is captured by Alexander and Victoria, but is rescued by Ilya after Gabby seemingly betrays them. Victoria kills Dr. Teller and imprisons Gabby, who was secretly working for the British intelligence all along. Ilya and Solo rescue Gabby and fire a homing missile at Victoria's ship, destroying the nuclear weapon along with Victoria. Solo, Ilya, and Gabby reunite and are informed they've been reassigned to Alexander Waverly's new international organization, codenamed U.N.C.L.E.
That's right. We've got a new name for the team, U.N.C.L.E. 10 seconds.
I get scared of the last name of Alexander and Victoria, so it backed off. Vinci Guerra.
I don't even. Yeah, Vinci Guerra. I don't even remember it.
Yeah, I got scared. I backed away.
This is a spy thriller, a little comedy mixed in, a lot of action mixed in. John, you brought a spy movie to the table. I think spy movies have inherent advantages, things that you might expect to see. And one of the things that's nice about that is you have a nice mold like James Bond movies, where beautiful locations, inherent mystery, and secret keeping abound. Audience is always in on stuff that the characters aren't in on. Suave language, witty banter, sexy, intimate, high pressure rendezvous. There's so much stuff going on. and these spy movies that can reach into this bucket and pull at will. What is it about a spy movie that you seek out, and how did The Man from U.N.C.L.E. deliver?
I feel like it is a spy movie at its core, but I was starting to think to myself while watching it, there's a lot of movies that feel like spy movies that aren't technically spy movies. I feel like most heist movies have a spy movie feel to them, right?
Yes.
And then I started to just genuinely be like, what is a spy movie? Like, does it have to have military operatives from using espionage against countries, or is it just more of a vibe kind of thing? And as long as there's sort of like a mystery and we're trying to be sneaky, then it qualifies for a spy movie for me. For this one, I think it pulls from pretty much every bucket that you listed, right? It pulls everything from the bucket. You have the rich costumes, you have Magnificent Island, you have something foreign, at least to most audiences, Italian area. Like it kind of grabs everything from what you had listed. It just goes, yep, we're going to take it all.
We know these things work, and when you buy the ticket for a spy movie, I think you kind of expect some of those things. Chad, did you feel as if you were satisfied with the spy movie content you got?
I think it's interesting because it kind of subverts your expectations on all of these different buckets. We see them failing, and we see particularly Solo and Ilya antagonizing each other in their own failures. And they're both very bright people, but Solo, particularly, he fails a lot in this movie. He's like, oh yeah, this safe doesn't have an alarm. Alarm goes off.
Yep.
He immediately drinks the laced cocktail. Now it's a fun scene of how competent he is. Of he sets up the pillow, and you get the fun scene of, what are you doing? Like, well, last time I banged my head.
Last time I did this.
Which implies it's happened.
He has an absolute unearned confidence.
Yes.
In the beginning of the movie, you're like, wow, he's so calm. It's because, and he almost has this luck to him that everything works out, right? That, the car crashes through the alleyway, but he actually meant to go through that window, right? It's like the world just gives him what he wants. And he fails constantly and seems to be going upwards anyways,
Yeah. The left through the window. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But all of that was fantastic. And he has a sense of code. Like it wouldn't seem right to shoot. It was Ilya. And he makes the excuse that this dude's like subhuman. But it also subverts the sexy trope. Gabby, she wrestles with Ilya, and we do get, that's a very sexy scene, but it's interrupted. And when he has to put the tracking device or the
into the garter
microphone on the garter, that's interrupted, and there's never really a sense of they get together. So she's not the damsel in distress. In fact, she's playing them. So there's a lot of things that you could go in and say, all right, on paper this is derivative of Bond, but this is done so much better than honestly some of the Bond movies that we do get. It feels fresh.
The Bond stuff can, and we know that we've got co-hosts that are big Bond heads. I'm a big Bond head, and we know that there are things that are like required. There's a difference between the freedom of drawing from the spy content bucket and the rigidity of most of the Bond movies through the decades. Is, well, you better make time to speak to the quartermaster because Desmond Llewellyn is great, and you got to talk to Q. And we're going to have one or two femme fatales, and they're not going to be so helpless, and their names are going to be kind of silly, and they're playing both sides. Like there are things that, luckily, with Bond, you're always getting incredible shots on location, but there are things that I think that this movie did feel very fresh. And so that's where I wanted to ask John, how does this movie break the mold?
I think it brings in a lot of that in director style than in some of the edit. There's a whole ending sequence that they completely skip over in what would be like a big dramatic thing. Whenever they finally get revealed by Hugh Grant's character, Waverly, I believe it is, that, here's your mission. You're going to go in and you're going to do this nuclear war. And they basically Steven Soderbergh the entire thing into just this montage of blocked edits, and it does a lot of interesting things throughout the film that are like that. The opening sequence has like a musicality to a lot of, the window cranking down and things that like fit in really well, that give it a fun, almost the same, like it's more fun, and I don't want to say campy, but like
there's even a little bit of language there too. He says something to Gabby in the front of the car, and it's something that's like, it seems so brash. Like, what a risk to say. And are we setting the stage for a guy that will say more, or say more than like what you might expect to let out? He says something, I think it was, when you hear something that sounds like a gunshot, drive.
Right.
Ooh, now this is different, because Bond wouldn't say it like that, or Bourne wouldn't say it like that. This is somebody who is then very soon after described to us with his history of being a thief. And that's an interesting part of the character's history. But same question for you, Chad, is I think you mentioned the antagonistic rivalry of our two mains, and that can be its own content section here as well. But how else does this movie break the mold for you?
How particularly Gabby is used, and how she features such a prominent role, but she's not the object to be obtained at the end. She winds up betraying the boys, but she does kind of give them a heads up, and she reveals, hey, it's a weird cut. I don't like the cut that they did where she says, I'll tell you how we know, and then we just cut to Ilya running, and then we go back to it. But she talks about how the engagement ring is bugged, and she knows that, which is a fun callback to, hey, I found these in my room, Russian technology.
Right,
I found
right.
these in my room, American technology, quite bad.
This is an opportunity for them to like poke fun a little bit, but also we have the antagonistic rivalry. We have Gabby, who is not, we'll say, innocent here, or not a bystander to this plot. In fact, a big part of it. But the way that I see this as they're competing with each other throughout is, you mentioned the nice guys, John, but I was just talking in our show last week that a little bit of a rivalry or a competition from our leads is always something that I think can be a little fun. Then you think, like, who am I rooting for here? And I think pretty quickly we start. I don't know how long it lasts that you might be rooting for one over the other. I think what we're rooting for is for this buddy cop annoy each other situation to last as long as possible.
Yeah, and they trade back and forth pretty much the entire time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ilya gets him with it's one of my favorite parts of the sort of rivalry banter is the CO2 laser, right? And he just through the whole chain link fence. Immediately afterwards, Solo is the better one at picking locks. It goes back and forth, and it's like they're not really keeping count of things prior. It's I got to beat you right now. It like stays in the moment. It stays present, right? I will add, I think one of the ways it breaks the mold of a spy movie is there's a character growth with Ilya. I think actually he's the only one that really has like a character arc, sort of. Where in the beginning, this sort of shame with his family and the psychotic episodes that Solo brings up to him, and you can see that, and he has to sort of restrain himself from doing that, and then it culminates at the end with he has
Got your dad's watch for you,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's the only character that really has a arc or path or a growth to be had, and I don't think many other spy movies really have that kind of theming with a character.
I mean, Jaws found a girlfriend, and he became reformed.
Moonraker, yeah, one of the best part about Moonraker. Here's to us. That's. I didn't think about it that way. Now, it is something that it does have you on the edge of your seat. Is that what are spies meant to do? They're meant to complete a mission. We brought up Inglourious Basterds. What they're doing is completing a mission. A lot of these things are completing a mission. And whether you are another military operative working behind enemy lines, with spy movies, you do get much more of the non-combatant espionage, sneaking in, listening to each other. I think this movie, it kind of reminds me of the magic act Penn and Teller, where one of the things Penn and Teller do as part of their act is to amaze you. They are telling you how they're doing the act as they're doing it to further subvert you. And then after you've seen, they do the cups and balls trick with clear plastic cups. So you're actually seeing the mechanics of it go. So the idea of like, we are shown how they bug each other. We are shown how they are constantly interrupting or intercepting their own secret covert messages. They're always kind of keeping track of each other because they don't trust each other yet. It was something where I think this is a spy movie best suited for people that understand what spy movies are. Where it's
right.
It's like this is in a way a goofy love letter to because spy movies can be very serious sometimes.
You could enjoy this movie without having seen the Bond movies, but it's going to enhance it. It's a lot like Russell has talked about. He saw Cabin in the Woods before he saw Evil Dead. And after he saw Evil Dead, he texted me and said, I really needed this context. Like, I didn't understand a whole lot of Cabin in the Woods until I saw this movie. So, a lot of those styles where it's almost riffing off of something else.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, and what you were saying with the Inglourious Basterds has actually reminded me that is technically a spy movie. It's filled with spies, but it doesn't feel like a spy movie, right? Like, I don't think that people would call it a spy movie. Like, oh yeah, you want to see a spy movie? You watch Inglourious Basterds. That's not a recommendation you would make, even though the entire movie is about spies setting up a assassination attempt, right?
Yeah.
And this movie is a spy movie, tries to feel like a spy movie, it does it,
Definitely. And it doesn't, I think even with all the ways that it uses additional tools, that it's still, you mentioned it first, my first question, it's still at its core a spy movie. This movie is also really funny. Now, we've got our showrunner, Russell, who is just a comedy freak, absolutely loves comedies. Chad, I want you to talk about the humor here. Is this an action movie with a little humor sprinkled in? Or is this a spy comedy that just happens to do action well?
I think it's the latter for me, and I'll start with the bathroom scene. Like, we're getting fun little quips, but Bond has fun little quips, and it does not make any Bond movie a comedy. But when we have them both at urinals, and all of a sudden Ilya bursts through and tackles Solo, and the boss continues doing his business while looking over his shoulder, like, that this isn't just an action movie with funny moments. We're going in a completely different direction. And Ilya's choking Solo out like, hey, don't kill your partner. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. Same question for you, John. It's something that I wanted to ask it this way because it's okay if it doesn't fit into any of these arbitrary categories that I created. It's just that if you were to present this to a friend or make the recommendation, would you say that, like, hey, I'm inviting you over to watch this movie due to intrigue, or I'm inviting you over to watch this movie due to, like, it's a great fun time?
And that's exactly what I was going to. It's a fun time. I think whenever I recommended it to you and you want to watch this movie, it's not because it's awesome. And I feel like, you tell people go see Mad Max, it's awesome because of the action. I would not say like, oh, see The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It's just a fun time. And I think Chad kind of said it perfectly with, it's a spy comedy with some action that it does well. I would like to pose the question, do you guys think it maintains that tone consistently throughout the entire movie?
No. It lost. The torture scene was fun torture. Like, there were little
as funny as you can make that torture be.
Right. There were little tiny moments of fixing the short and Analog Man, but I do feel like as we had to put actual stakes in that final chase of Victoria and the conversations on the boat didn't have the same witty banter. It almost seemed mean spirited towards the end. Like, Solo's done.
those are the scenes that I'm thinking of too, where it missed the mark for me. I think the biggest tonally for me is the like dune buggy chase scene.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you just clipped it and just took that whole chase scene, and then you clip the opening chase scene, you put them side by side and show that to somebody, they would think they're two different movies entirely.
Absolutely,
Right?
that's a great point.
And it doesn't match the rest of the film. It has like a filter over it. They changed the color tone. It looks like an entirely different location. Like everything looks just different and not from the same film. That's where it. And then the shots with the rain coming down and like really showing the bruise marks on his face and everything like that. To like it's kind of gritty. Whereas earlier they're throwing. He's driving off of a pier into a lake with a bus, and everything's fine, and there's no scratches to be tended to afterwards and things like that. So it just kind of feels a little off near the end,
I think it's once they make the costume change into the wetsuits on the boat. I guess we can even go one step further. It's when they're on the helicopter to the with the backing of the military and they raid the island. At that point, we have kind of put comedy to the side.
Yes.
Now, that point is an hour and 10 minutes in. So we're culminating the movie with a departure from what made the movie stand out. But I also think that's probably just from a writer's perspective, we do have to pull this together somehow. So they make the choice, pull it together with a successful. It can't be so far-fetched. We have to have like that there's the cavalry has come in with like the boats, that there's support with the rest of the island. We are thrown a couple, what spy movie or what thriller movie doesn't have some last second real twists? The idea that they recovered the bomb, but it's the wrong bomb. Now this is a classic zigzag. And so now we have to use the movie had been defined by Solo's mishaps and kind of Elmer fudding his way through some of these things sometimes. And then it turns into his intellect seeing the photo, like a photographic memory of seeing the boat. Oh, I know which boat it is.
The diadem.
Yes.
The diadem. And then we also have a cutting words coming from him over the radio in order to get Victoria to actually answer the radio, answer the phone. It is a phone. But like that's how it kind of culminates is that we abandon the comedy and get to, well, let's actually prove to the audience that we know what we're doing with the way this puzzle comes together. But then we are then rewarded with all right, let's get back to this mission. John, both of them had the same mission of kill the American, kill the Russian, if you have to. So you know that they are guys who are supposed to follow orders here. But did you feel as if, like on the edge of your seat, is Ilya going to go country over new bond, or like new friendship?
No, I had all, from the moment they posed it, I'm like, well, they're not going to.
These guys are going to.
They're not. Like, it would, if only because it would make the film so much worse, It would turn the vibe completely on its head. It would kind of go against, in what we were already talking about, kind of steered away from that tone a little bit. If you did have this dramatic ending where one of them kills the other one, you lose every ounce of the sort of frenemy buddy cop thing that you've been squeezing from the entire time, right? It just it would sour all of that, right? It just didn't feel like the film was meant to go that way. So you kind of knew that they weren't. I will say that it is, they're not going to turn on each other, but the way that it solidifies it with the watch was a really nice touch. Because that just may have gotten to the fringe of your memory while watching it, right? And so I think that was a good way to do it, to make it believable,
Yeah, I wanted to see one more fight between the two. We didn't.
You took the words out of my mouth.
They're great, great scenes, but I don't think I expected them to come to blows. I didn't expect them for one of them to wind up dead. So I'll agree with John there. I didn't feel threatened by that piece.
Or somehow one final battle of wits. Now, what we have is Ilya is speaking on the phone with his commander of some sort. He goes upstairs. You have Solo looking at him through like a mirror, and you can see that like Ilya's reaching into his coat pocket in the way it was. If one of them is the more gregarious, it's clearly Solo, and Ilya being described as a giant, and Armie Hammer's a big dude, but I like the idea that he's not a complete freak of nature. He's just like a big, strong man. But like, yeah, one last face-off somehow. I don't know what that could have looked like, but instead we get kind of a softer ending, and it must end this way to be with the source material. Is that it's going to end with these two guys that end up working together. In preparation for the show, I watched an episode of the 1960s, The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Ooh,
it's okay.
Well, it was fine.
It's okay. There's something that I think you would find that you miss is that the Ilya character is just another British actor, and they don't attempt to really do that he's Russian.
Sean Connery, The Hunt for Red October. This is a Russian commander.
There's a Sean Connery movie that I've been pining to do on this show since I heard about this show, which is Dragonheart, the wonderful 19, I think it's a 1998 classic. Sean Connery's best work as Draco the Dragon.
His best work.
His best work. I think that's interesting that they didn't go for any sort of accent. How did you guys feel Armie Hammer's Russian was? And I guess also Napoleon's, I don't know if it's not really an accent. It's sort of just a suave. It's not quite transcontinental speak, but
I wrote down in my notes, until we get to Hugh Grant, this movie is absolutely refusing to cast anyone in their native tongue.
Yeah.
Cavill, Hammer, the weirdest one being Jared Harris.
Yeah.
Who is Cavill's boss. He's the guy that's kind of got Solo on a leash.
Well, Alicia Vikander, she's from Sweden, I believe, which they could speak German, but I didn't feel like her German accent was very good, to be honest. But they made her German, and it's like, why are we doing this? Why? Everyone was great in their roles. I liked. This is tough to say in 2024. This will release in 2025, but I really liked Armie Hammer here. I don't like the things that Armie Hammer is accused of. And just if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it. And there's a smorgasbord of bad things there.
What a word to use too. That's something, and I'll bring that up in superlatives. But let's talk about Vikander here. I think, Chad, I would have liked to have the Gabby character for 10 or 15 minutes more as an agent in her own right. I would have wanted more of that. Would you agree?
You're asking for a longer movie? Like, this is a good sign, but I agree. When she gets to turn the tables on the boys, that is a fun concept. And yeah, she immediately gets captured and becomes a damsel in distress, and that is frustrating. So I do want to see her maybe take out some of the guys on her own, or
I think that's what I mean. I'd like to see her, because we've done this before too. I mean, what is it in GoldenEye? Natalia gets firearms training and then becomes like a partner on the mission. Right? This is a computer analyst. I think against computer analysts, Chad.
I think her turn, the reveal of her being an agent was really good when you didn't quite know what was going on. Whenever she hangs up the phone and she says, like the meeting is on, and you're kind of like, wait, what's going on with her? And the shot and the music during that was really, really good. And then, but you get kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Chad. I think one of my bigger disappointments was, or a miss for me in a great movie, was the reveal of what she really said during that meeting was like a minute after the part where the gap where you don't know what it was, right? it felt too close to each other. I felt like a longer period of time before you get the, oh, that's what she said, would have served it a little bit better and would have left you feeling better. It was just too close. They do a similar thing near the end with the launch of the missile, where they kind of immediately recap you on the thing that just happened.
It happens twice, and I think this is important. I want to give more detail to this. I think the best so flashback in most movies or revealing the secret info, incredibly done in the Ocean's films, really well done in those. Well done in a lot of spy thrillers. It's like, what's the piece of info that should have been there that once you have it all comes together. But the one that makes the most sense in terms of the timing is from Watchmen, which is, it's the classic thing from the graphic novel and from the movie, which is, I did this 35 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Know, right?
Ozymandias.
Do you think I would have told you my plan if there was the slightest chance of failure? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have two instances, but what did you think about that use of that tool at the end, John? You just mentioned it. Was it something that, once again, you're in the middle of the section that is turning away from what had made the movie successful earlier, and then you have oh, by the way, we already did it, and then 5 seconds later, boom, splash.
I didn't feel like it. I felt like if they wanted to do that, if they wanted to have that, by the way, we already did it, don't show me 90% of the things that lead me to believe that a missile's being launched. I knew it was, the guy takes the key off of his, and I'm like, oh, well, that's definitely like a launch for code, or, it's for something. And then they show that again immediately in their little flashback. It was hardly a flashback, and I didn't think that one was very successful. I do think the Gabby one was better done in that you don't know what she said, right? You don't really know what it is, other than that she turned on them in some capacity, because the dogs begin chasing Ilya. But you don't really know that she is an MI6 agent, essentially, right? Until a bit later, which is, I think that's better.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things going for this movie. I think that the first moment I get that this movie is going to be a little bit off is a comedic moment, which is we have a very cool and very, I guess, calculated, we'll say, escape in East Germany, like escape from the mechanic shop. And during this time, there is this kind of unrelenting pursuer who you don't know is going to be one of the leads here. And it's when he runs and catches up to the car, and he says it out loud for it. I think he's trying to stop the car.
And he rips off the trunk. Yeah.
I think that is the first moment where you go, oh, this is what kind of film it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
That's the first time you feel it.
Yeah. And it's good. It's good. Well, and that's where, like, with when a movie gives you stuff like this, you're kind of hungry for more. But I don't think, John, you and I were talking before the show, I don't think the ending, as a departure from what had made the movie successful earlier, I still like when time is taken to give you a real wrap up. But I think it's generous, and there's times when that can end up being sloppy. It can end up being something like, oh, they had to really try hard to make that work. Chad, does our big bad plot of Nazis getting a bomb, is that something that matters here, or is it really about the dynamics of our characters interacting with each other?
It absolutely does not matter whatsoever. No. Like, sure, Nazi sympathizers want to have a nuclear arsenal. Great. But the plot is the weakest point of this movie. It doesn't matter whatsoever. It's just an excuse to have us travel somewhere else, have cool locations, do cool things, have big escapes.
Do cool things, have a good time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Involve yourself with rich people, because we have to have the rich settings. We have to have, like, the Monte Carlo type.
Gotta have the costumes.
Racing. Yeah, the giant island lair. All of that's cool. And you can hand wave. Oh, of course they've got several dune buggies and other things readily available for you to just take and chase this down. So yeah, the plot to me, it's there. I'm not gonna.
It exists. It has one. It has one. It's good. It's okay that it has one, but that's not something that you're writing home about. Speaking of things to write home about, John, I don't know if this factored into your choosing the movie, but this may be one of the most stylish movies we've covered in a long time.
It's an option, it's an option that I gave because it's a fun time, and we've talked about the spy stuff and everything like that. But it's the thing that it reminds me of the most, which is a very recent film, is actually Glass Onion, the Knives Out.
Oh yeah,
mystery. It has so much of the same sort of island lair, but it's really the costumes, the dresses, like the color used in the film. It feels kind of almost ahead of its time in that recently Netflix has this sort of like color palette that I feel like they really like with their films, that this movie actually feels like it fits very much in with that. And yeah, I think all of that lends to it being super stylish. I mean, Gabby's glasses and all of her hats are pretty much, can carry costumes. Also, the Victoria plays a fantastic version of a Bond villain that for this movie, right?
Yeah.
I actually thought it was pretty refreshing that it was her and not her husband.
Not her husband, who's the son of the last name that we can't remember.
Yeah, I thought that was really refreshing, and I think she plays the part really well for it too. Without being, and it's odd, even though there is a sex scene with her, and well, it's at least it's going on with her and Solo.
Yeah,
she never really falls victim to that. She has to use her sexuality as a way to be superior or maintain her authority, or it's not like she needs that at all or uses that for any particular gain, right? Which I thought was refreshing too.
So. Yeah, it's pretty much, I broke into his room, I better follow through or my plan falls apart.
Exactly.
So yeah, that made sense. And as far as style, I agree. Like, this is a immensely stylish movie. The music that's going along with it, the score is just incredible. It's so much fun. I saw a comment from one critic that said our composer understood this movie assignment more than our director, and they felt Guy Ritchie nailed the directing. It was just a huge praise for our composer.
Yeah,
there's so many unique touches. I wish Fry were here, because he is our suit guy, and our suits are done by people that work on Bond films, but Cavill's suit in particular looks amazing. The wardrobe scene that John is talking about, where they're trying to, I love the argument over dressing Gabby.
That's a great scene.
Their rivalry also goes into fashion. Like, they will argue over everything, and it also I think it aids the idea that they're very successful spies because they understand fashion and they understand that that's important. It's not just about shooting people and being cool and stuff like that. And it also serves their rivalry by it doesn't have to match and various things like that.
It doesn't have to match.
There's a small thing. It's not explicitly shown, but Solo does tell him after the exchanging of chipped bugged room stuff. He says that bow doesn't work with that suit. And the next shot is him with the tie instead, right? And it's not like directly on it, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. The women get a chance to encompass that 60s style, and in places that 60s style can be shown off. When we have a Bond movie, for instance, and you go to they are fighting over everything, and that includes the fashion. It includes like the tech. They are still kind of representing their countries. We know that Solo kind of has failed throughout the movie. But I think the thing that is fun to see is that Ilya isn't perfect either. That when they are going down the steps in that, are they in Italy at that point, guys? Where they're talking about the architecture of those steps.
They're in Rome, yeah.
And they're in Rome. So at that point,
The Spanish steps.
He's making he's describing, like, part of his cover story that this is something that he wanted to honor his mother, and so it's 135 steps. Well, actually, she was 100, he was 35. She hits him back with so she was 65 when she had him, and his response, you can tell he's floundering, and that's so welcome in a movie, to see that the smooth character or the suave character or somebody that's supposed to be on top of everything, well, no, they don't really have the answer. I think that's something we love to see.
He's not used to being challenged, and particularly by a woman. I mean, you get the impression that Gabby is every bit his equal, and he's like, I don't know what to do with this. We talked a little bit about the dressing scene. He's like, my woman would not wear that. And here is Gabby talking back to him of, well, you are clearly a BS artist. Like, this makes no sense what you're telling me.
I'm going to finish this bottle. Do you want to dance? You don't want to dance, or you want to wrestle? I thought those scenes, every time that they get close, and that's something where I use this phrase from 30 Rock from 15 years ago, but it's the idea that it's hotter when you don't touch. John, their chemistry, the idea that we aren't given some kind of payoff where they, wedding bells and they run off to the sunset. I think that just adds to, hey, sensual tension is sometimes better than just on-screen sexuality.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, there was a slight moment of having to accept, like, oh, they're into each other. Like, it did kind of come on a little bit sudden, without me feeling like there was necessarily like a organic buildup to it. Aside from they're both just very attractive people. Once I had that buy-in, I did think that the scenes were done well, right? They also probably get, in any movie that I've watched, they probably get the closest to kissing without kissing than I've seen probably ever, And I think they were pretty good. I love that there wasn't a well, now we can be together, or now we can't be together because we're on the same mission team. I'm glad that wasn't ever like addressed. They just left it as just sort of fun, sexy tension here or there.
Yeah, and I think that's a kudos to our director here. Is decide when you want to string out, or when you want to stretch this feeling. Know what your audience wants and don't give it to them, and remind them what they actually want is the tension. Chad, were there other things that the director did, whether it's stylistically, whether it's with shots? I mean, he was blessed with great locations. Was there anything else like focusing on the direction of this movie that you were like, man, I couldn't get past this episode without saying this?
He has more patience to let the comedy breathe than I think a lot of directors. A lot of directors would have cut away, and particularly the absolute madness and chaos of the boat scene where Solo is just slowly eating a sandwich, turns on the radio, doesn't like the song, and he just keeps digging and digging, and he's mining gold every single time. But I think a lot of directors just wouldn't have the patience and wouldn't show you all those great shots in the background, or they'd make it too Looney Tunes-esque. It still is very, very akin to a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah,
but
it has that almost campy feel that I was saying earlier. Maybe that's, I don't know what the right word is really, but it has that surrealism where something crazy is happening and it's being treated like everything's fine, right? And a normal Bond movie, like a Bond movie or other spy movies, would never sort of have that sort of humor of the boat chase scene happening while an Italian ballad's playing, and it's sort of like, ooh, a Chianti. Oh, look, a sandwich. Ooh, like, and he takes the time. He's already wet. He was just in a lake, and he still takes the time to put the napkin there. Like that matters in the moment. I think the film does that again, where one of the best things that it has is it doesn't show, or the best thing that's happening, and what makes the situation funnier is what's happening in the background. Rather than doing like kind of flashbacky stuff, where it just the funny thing in the background or the action in the background is making the scene funny. And it was when Rudy is electrocuted in the chair.
Yeah.
It's a similar scene of the action is happening over there, and the scene is, between Ilya and Solo and them arguing, or not arguing, but explaining how he's just going to get off, and I don't know what we do about this. The problem's being solved already, and they don't know. I think, but both of those are, to me, the funniest scenes in it. And I think it's because of the director's choice to have the action behind it, and the audience know already.
I left my jacket in there.
yeah, that's a good comment after.
Then I think that really does kind of fall back to the director, is when the two, leads are straight manning each other, and it's the environment that is funny.
Yes. That's a good way to put that.
A lot of directions that this movie pulls us in, and I want to talk more about this movie even more in our superlative section. Are you ready, guys?
Excellent.
I'm ready.
All right, John, we'll start with you, our guest. Who's the MVP of The Man from U.N.C.L.E?
I think the MVP is Henry Cavill. I think he pulls off the suave, confident, lucky, attractive man. This a big thief, very, very well. It's hard to imagine somebody else bringing his charisma or his kind of old Hollywood style, like charm, this look that he has.
He's debonair.
Right? Yeah, oh, absolutely. He's so suave. I feel like other choices would have either leaned the movie in like a more actiony direction, or a kind of like a pure comedy, and then you'd kind of don't believe that he's this strong spy. I think he's just the MVP for me, for sure.
Good option. Chad, who's your MVP?
For the same reasons, it's Henry Cavill for me. George Clooney was up for this role, and he had to drop out because he was having back issues. Tom Cruise had a conflict doing Mission Impossible, but he was up for this. I think Tom Cruise is a terrible choice. George Clooney's a bit older than I'd want in this role, but he kind of has that same energy. He's got that smarmy, confident, charming, suave role, but I actually do think this is my favorite Henry Cavill role. Like, this is where I say the whole package. You're not just strong and incredibly handsome. Here you are charming and suave and funny too. And that's kind of unfair to be packaged in one human being.
Yeah. Leave some of the rest of us.
It makes me think. Yeah, right. It can't be everything. And then, Ilya is just as strong and smart as you, and he's also like 3 inches taller and got 30 pounds on you. Like, that's not fair. I think in a way, I look at it like with Henry Cavill's other roles, it's not taken away from the role, but I feel as if like he's a warrior as Superman, a stoic, strong man who is now like given the challenge of playing this suave spy and nails it. So it seems like a greater accomplishment. And I'm not taking away from your guys' choice of MVP. For me, it's Armie Hammer, and it's because he'll never get a chance to be an MVP of anything ever again. So this is his one chance to get some flowers. I will say, the first time I watched it with you, John, the second time, I root for Ilya right away. And part of that is, as a Bond head, you've got your favorite henchman that like you root for it. And he's kind of like, he's got the henchman feel. And then he's got the character arc, the reformed bad guy. He's not a bad guy, but you know what I'm getting at. I think that's good. And then there's also something about the way this is shot is I've seen Armie Hammer in other movies, and I don't look at him and say like, this guy is on that like Hollywood heartthrob handsome level. But there's something about the drab browns and colors that they put on him that make his blue eyes pop in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's also got a menace. They call him the Red Peril. Another just comedic thing, a menacing nickname, but it's funny. But when he is upset, you know that the wrecking crew's coming. I think that's a cool aspect of that portrayal. John, who's the best supporting actor here?
It's got to be Sylvester Groth. For me, I think
Uncle Rudy.
Yeah. They made this guy so despicable. And you know what? Perhaps it's very easy to play a torturing Nazi guy. That's a got it. Be as disgusting and sadistic as possible, right? But I think since his when he was first introduced at the gala, there was the anniversary party. You just know this guy slimy. There's some, even before he makes the racy comment about the Aryan blood and stuff like that. He just has this vibe, and I think he maintains that throughout it. Regardless of the kind of during the torture scene where I think it gets a little too dark for the kind of film it wants to be, but he still plays it really well. You just kind of hate this guy and are glad that he dies, right? I think he does it well. There's also something to be said about him. You want to make a guy creepy? No, I was going to say, you want to make a guy creepy or make somebody feel kind of weirded out by somebody, have them do something weird with food. Right? Like Denethor Stewart of Gondor eating the cherry tomato, right? And then in the other examples in Get Out, the girlfriend like separating her Fruit Loops from the milk. Like just have somebody and here Uncle Rudy like skins a grape and like stacks sugar cubes. Like I feel like they're always doing something weird with food to make you go, this person's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, good call. Chad, who's your best supporting?
With Alicia Vikander as Gabby. I covered the weirdness of how we're just not casting anyone according to where they were born or what their native tongue is, but I did feel like in a powerhouse type of performance, Armie Hammer does great, Henry Cavill, she manages to steal some scenes, and I think that's really, really hard to do. And especially the architecture discussion, shout out Russell Guest, like, this is for you. And it is fun. You go back to this era, the 50s and 60s type eras. If you want a pseudo high profile occupation, 99% of the time, they're going to be an architect. Like, that's your upper middle class go to. You go watch something like Bewitched. And what was Darren Stevens? He was an architect. So it's just a thing from this period of, you want a respectable job, be an architect.
Yeah. I'm going to second that with Alicia Vikander here. And I think for a lot of the things you said, but there's something to be able to command a presence and to be an actor or to be an agent in the world surrounding you without needing to have like secret kung fu or to be a master of knives. Like she's just a strong presence. And that's because of the performance. So well done there. John, hidden gem for this movie.
I don't know if this is necessarily underappreciated, and it's a little odd. I'm not even sure if this is necessarily strongly my pick, but Hugh Grant. It's weird to call Hugh Grant a hidden gem, but he has maybe a minute and a half in this movie, like at best, right? If you watch the trailer for this movie and look at the, who's in this movie, you would think that Hugh Grant.
Look at the
poster. You would think you're going to see a lot more of Hugh Grant than you do. That being said, what little lines he has are fantastic. I think he's great. I wish he was in it more. Maybe in a potential sequel.
Had it been a bigger success, that potential sequel, that would have been something we would all love to watch.
Yeah.
Have as many of these as there are Kingsmen.
The other, I'll say, just as a little element that I liked was you know what, even his character name escapes me because he's really not in it too much. Is Victoria's husband,
Right.
Alexander? Thank you. Yeah, I mean he's in this huge fight scene at the end, but that's not why I think I like him. I just kind of thought he did a good job. You know, his mustache is great. His scene entrance, his movie exit, all of it's pretty good. I thought he was good.
There's only one thing I want to bring up about that portrayal. You know, it's more about the character than about Luca Calvani. Is this guy is like an F1 driver? Like, give us some F1 driving. I don't think it counts that the road on the island is windy. That's something where we do get incredible chases, but if we're going to spend time on incredible chases, one more wouldn't be bad. Somehow for him to show that he's got skill in that way. I like to be able to show off the characters what they're good at.
So I was going to say, so that's 20 more minutes of runtime that you want, and 10 minutes of it is Gabby being a special agent, and 10 minutes of it is F1 driving.
Maybe part of her special agent talent is she's a really good driver too. Hey, we know she's a mechanic, right?
True.
And so they have to race to stop the bomb.
Yeah. Her being a mechanic and being able to work on race cars is kind of adds to that campy feel. Like, well, I'm a mechanic and I work in a chop shop. Therefore, I can work on all car things, you know?
Therefore, I can fix the rocket.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys are really nailing me to the wall with trying to extend this movie. What's your hidden gem, Chad?
I was going to go with Sylvester Groth for all the reasons that John said, but I think I'll point out that David Beckham is in this movie. He is the projectionist at the beginning.
He's the projectionist. That was almost going to be my hidden gem. I actually, instead, I was really captivated by our costuming. Like, really captivated, more so than most movies. And so there's very specific inspiration from two models, Marisa Berenson and Verushka, from the Vogue issues in 1966 and 1968. We've done this before. Specifically, we did this for the movie Collateral. Like you said, Brian's a suit guy, but we did the movie Collateral, and you can find websites and like fashion blogs where they like break down the style. And they did a great job with Tom Cruise's gray suit in that movie. And they did the same thing with Victoria's outfits and specifically Ilya's outfits, of how this was like actually iconic of the time. And that just shows that they must have done some serious homework as well.
The squared off pocket style and the covered buttons.
That's right. Yes, that's right. We talked about that last time too. John, you got to recast somebody. Who is it and who's their replacement?
It would be Gabby's father. He really was more of a plot point than anything, but maybe with a different actor, it is a little better. You don't really care that he died at all. The scenes and his delivery on things were just, is this the plot guy? You know, that I think that could have been it could have been done better.
It doesn't hurt Gabby at all.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd been dead in her life for most of her life, and then all of a sudden he's back.
Yeah, so. And maybe it's a problem with the writing in that there's no one to really make that specific role grand, but maybe if I don't know. So I think somebody else could have been better.
Who's your recast, Chad?
I am recasting Armie Hammer because I just don't want to have the conversations that his casting invites. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal can do a Russian accent, and I want Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie.
Jake Gyllenhaal would be actually that's pretty good. I like that.
That's really good, Chad. Chad, it's not like you don't have good picks, but that's maybe the best one I've ever heard. That's really good. For me, Elizabeth Debicki, who's our Victoria. She's 24 at the time. I think she's a bit young for this role, for this specific role. Not crazy too young, just a bit young. A nightmare recast would be putting Paris Hilton there. There's no way. My first instinct was Eva Mendes, especially with the the Via Guerra part of it. But she would have been just a bit too old. So I found someone right in the middle, and I think the timing would have worked out great, is to have Natalie Dormer be that character.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You're going some Game of Thrones.
That was like right at the peak of like the season that she was there, and then she's getting a lot of other castings too, like Hunger Games. I think I've seen none of those movies, but
Yeah.
I just thought that could work.
Rose Byrne and Charlize Theron were up for it. But
Rose Byrne needs to be in so many more things. John, what's your best shot of the movie?
I think it's going to be with when Gabby says the meeting is on and the camera pulls back and there's one, the two twin beds, she's sitting in one, and just the way her hair is up. The framing of that shot, I think, is fantastic. The music that's playing during it is it's sort of ending a sort of like a chase scene kind of vibe, and you're kind of wondering like what's going to happen next. And I think that it lingers on it for a good 10 seconds, really, and nothing's moving in the shot except for the camera pulling back. I think that one's really good. It's probably my favorite shot.
The next step is ready to be taken.
Yes, yeah, and it's letting you kind of hang on that for a bit. It's fun.
Chad, what's your best shot?
There's kind of a unique shot that they don't really replicate again. So when Solo is opening the vault, we get the vault door opening and the camera swings with the door to track it. And it's just this unique kind of wide-angled shot. And I enjoyed that.
It was pretty cool. We actually have some other cool angles with Cavill in frame. I think about like beginning when Ilya is going over his briefing on who Solo is, and you've got him sort of leaning, aiming a gun, and you see just sort of half of his face in light. That there's a lot of cool angles in this movie. My best shot, actually, though, is it's about its style, and it's about its. There was something that really reminded me of just like the Breakfast of Tiffany's cover. But it's after he gets drugged and he lies down on the couch, Victoria then lies on the top of the couch and looks down at him in that stunning dress. And it's like, what a strange act and a cool shot. And it was actually, there was a sillier shot right around it when he's dazing out and her voice gets really low. And
I wasn't a fan of that part.
Screen. That I think was more of a like tie back to, because like I said, I watched one of the 60s TV episodes. That's something they would do in that show. Like it's kind of a tie back to how you get that message across back then. I don't care for that, but it was juxtaposed with something that was a stunning shot. What's your best scene, John?
It's going to be the scene that I wait to get to every single time I've seen this movie, which is the Italian radio like ballad playing while Solo's eating his sandwich and having Chianti. That's the scene I think about when I think about this movie. I think it best encapsulates the comedy. It best encapsulates the action. You have that rivalry. I don't care what happens to him, out there. And, I think it sums up the movie's strengths really well.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Chad, what's yours?
It's same for me. I love that scene, and especially it just escalates. It builds on itself, and the slow preparation in the truck, and then you see through the window, the boat bursts into flames.
Yeah.
And then it capsizes and it starts sinking, and there's just no sense of urgency. Like it's very much, if he dies, he dies.
It's got some clever parts in it too. With the, you're like, what is he doing? Just driving off? Oh, I guess he used it to smash the boat. Oh, he's also using the headlights to find him. You know what I mean? Like it's got some nice progression through it the whole time. That begins, by the way, with that same sort of course, he's going to be lucky. It's what he wants, which is, where's the keys? Oh, they're right here. Right. Yeah.
That is mine as well. We went 3 for 3 on this. I think it is the best scene in the movie. And I wanted to bring up what John said is that, he waits a certain amount of time until the boat comes through and he just gasses it and smashes them with the top of the truck. That is something you might see from a Daniel Craig Bond of dropping a vehicle on someone. But it seems almost slapstick, but he's like, hey, this guy is probably timing it. It's not just luck. He's got that like calculated luck in a way. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
A couple left here. This one, big time for this movie. Best wardrobe or makeup moment, John.
I really liked Victoria's black and white outfit that she was wearing. I think, as much as you were saying you'd like her recast, I think her look was phenomenal. I think how they did her makeup and hair and her outfits were some of the best. And maybe it's because she's like the richest one there and kind of gets to wear the most extravagant stuff. But yeah, that's the best one for me.
Yeah, good option. Chad, what did you go with?
I went with Gabby's orange and white dress that she wears to meet her father. I think it's probably the most 60s outfit you could put on, but it also looks great on her.
Yeah, she wears it well. Mine is something you brought up earlier in the show, John, is they were competing in the sort of boutique scene as to like what goes with what and what would my fiance wear. And you could say that Ilya gets the best of that encounter. And it's the next morning when Solo says, that tie doesn't go with that suit. And it's immediately followed with he's wearing a regular necktie instead of the bow tie. That like he got one up on him though. Like they're always sparring. And so that's representative of that relationship. I thought that was great. All right. We mentioned that there are things like sometimes to be critical about the plot not mattering, but John, you've got to change one thing, just one. What do you change about this movie?
The dune buggy scene. That's my one thing. I think the rest of the sort of issues with the plot and the ending are much more tolerable if just that whole dune buggy chase just doesn't belong in the movie. It belongs in a different movie that is grittier and non-comedic. It just doesn't fit.
It's an opening scene to Man from U.N.C.L.E. is like high drama chase that ends in something that reminds you that this is comedy.
It looks like it should be more in the Bourne series than this, you know. That's my one thing. I think it's its weakest. It also lasts a really long time, way longer than it needs to. So cut it a little bit, and if it has to still stay a dune buggy chase, like something about the way that it's edited and the colors used and
yakety sax to it.
Yes, something, man. Yeah. I will say the music during it is incredible. Keep that. I like the music during it. It almost has like an immigrant song sort of vibe to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. We're ended with a fight. Ilya throws a motorcycle at somebody.
Yeah.
and then it's just like a cold-blooded kill. Like this is where the tone does shift a bit. Chad, what do you change? One thing.
And John's absolutely right with that last chase, but I am here to make enemies. You guys have both praised Victoria's makeup and wardrobe. I didn't like either.
Oh.
I had to go back. I'm like, 60s eyeliner. Did we go this dark? Because I kept seeing raccoon and it was distracting to me. And her dress seemed a bit too modern, where Gabby's orange and white dress had that pop. Black and white just, to me, that screams modern chic. And I understand there was 60s style. So I wanted both of those changed. Tone down the eye makeup and change the type of dress that she's in. I know we're trying to show higher class, but give her some color.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair complaint. I'm not going to be an enemy over you about it, because I think when you said raccoon, yeah, for sure. And some of her stuff does seem not period relevant, right? There are moments throughout the film that I feel like aren't very 60s, right? There are sometimes that it seems like he cares about it a lot, and sometimes that it's like, who cares about the period? You know, I think it's a little bit of a Guy Ritchie thing to take something that's to add a very modern wardrobe to something very old. He does it a lot in my favorite Guy Ritchie film, King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. You have to say the entire title. I love that movie, and Jude Law, his wardrobe looks like modern. It looks like it'd be on the cover of Vogue or some fashion magazine. Huh. I think that's just a thing that Guy Ritchie likes to do. It's a fair complaint, though.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't go that deep on Guy Ritchie. I got scared off I saw the regular King Arthur movie with Keira Knightley. That one,
yeah, not close to King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. It's
I wonder if I don't know. I'm not close to knowing enough about this to be giving a right opinion, but I wonder if like the kind of mod look. I wonder if white and black would be so distant from what was really going on with like that orange is so lovely, but I wonder if it's also just an indicator that like bad guy color. Like this is to remind you
monochrome.
of that.
They're
The sky is the limit, though. In a movie with this much style, it could have been.
That feels lazy to me. We'll put the bad guy in black because you won't understand they're evil unless they're in black, and our heroes are wearing white. Stop.
And we'll have them peel grapes weird, so you understand.
Cubes of sugar.
Yes.
For me, it was kind of hard to nitpick. I mentioned the thing about having the driver drive more, but I think the change one thing is Jared Harris is underused, and I would go so far as to say it's a miscast. Having him a Brit play a hard-boiled American agent just seems odd. And when I see Jared Harris, I want him to be an impactful guy. Jared Harris, for me, his character in Mad Men was incredible, and I loved his Moriarty. I know I'm sometimes on an island with that, but I loved that. Another Guy Ritchie directed movie. So this is something where he should have had either not been in the movie at all, or he should have mattered somehow more. That's my change one thing.
I think that's
I did enjoy him.
I liked him too. I think you're right. I think it could something about that could have been better. But I still liked him.
What did we need from him? Yeah, we just needed something. All right, well, let's finish. I think there's a lot of good options here. What's your best quote for this movie, John?
You should have seen it run.
I don't think you understand. It tore the back of my car.
I'm pretty sure he says it. I went back. You should have seen it run. The thing that came after me was Hardly Human. You should have seen it run. That's my favorite one. I just like that he used it so much. It also sets up his the hulking architect. You build more like an ox. That kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Chad, what's your best quote?
We've said it a lot, but it's still funny. It won't match. It doesn't have to match.
It does not have to match. Yeah, that's really good. That's a great scene too. That was actually my runner-up scene. Is that battle?
It's also correct. You don't have to match.
Yeah.
Mine is a button on a comedic scene like we were describing where, two straight men talking while something is funny going on in the background is after they realize that they let Uncle burn up in the chair with the great line, damn, I left my jacket in there. It's just so, it's nice when the movie so clearly gives you, this is a punchline, laugh, let's move on. It's so good. What a nice little button to that scene. Okay, it is time for us to bring it all together and assign our star rating to this movie. We do out of 5 stars. We do 0.5 star increments. So if you wanted to do a half star, that would be just okay. 0.5 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. John, how do you rate The Man from U.N.C.L.E?
I'm going to give The Man from U.N.C.L.E. a 3 out of 5 stars. I think my personal enjoyment of it was at its highest the first time I saw it. And I probably would have given it something a little bit higher then. And from what we've talked about already with some of the failings of the second half, or really last third, kind of bring it down a little bit for me. If the movie stopped before that, it would probably be a 4 even. I think it's a full star loss for me from the last third. But still very, very fun watch. Yeah. It's still above average for me.
Chad, what about you?
I went 4.5. Just stylish, fun, and I feel like if we could make any coherence out of the plot and have consistency at the end, it'd be 5. But yeah, it does fall apart in the third act, and we have a plot that doesn't really matter. Maybe we've kind of teased out, we want the father to matter. We want to have a better connection to some of these characters. I barely understood that Victoria and Alexander were married. Like, they're just there.
Yeah, I am going with 4.5 at matching you, Chad. And the reason I'm going so high is I think we talked a lot about how this movie is spy thriller staples and comedy, and that is a nice combination. I think you could. What we mentioned, it's nice if you have a background in spy movies, but I think you could introduce this movie to anyone, and you can say you're going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
I don't think it has a barrier to how you can understand things about World War II or about Nazis. Like it's easy enough to get, and you don't have to follow that crazy of a plot. It's the sum of its parts is good, and it doesn't greatly exceed that. I initially would have gone just 4 stars here because I feel like, kind of missing a plot, and it does deviate from what makes it successful. But the reason it's getting that extra half star from me is the action and the fighting. Guys, at my core, I'm a big fan of combat. I'm a big fan. The opening drive scene, like chase scene, has a full 360 gyro. And you might say, that's stupid. Or you might say, I love this.
Yeah, that was so cool. When the cars are joined together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously connected stunt cars, but I've often compared myself to the little monkey toy with cymbals. Like, that's me banging them together at that point.
I like this.
You did the
thing. So yeah, it got high marks for me, and it's because it was the action actually elevated this up for me.
Excellent.
Okay, well, before we wrap up the show, I need a little assistance picking a movie for next time. Chad, can you help me?
All right, let's do it, Dustin. Get your popcorn ready, because we are having more action here, but we are going to mix monsters, science fiction, high stakes, and maybe even bigger monsters. Yes! Right. Option 1, Edge of Tomorrow from 2014. Soldier fighting aliens gets to relive the same day over and over again, the day restarting every time he dies. Option 2, Godzilla from 2014. The world is beset by the appearance of monstrous creatures, but one of them may be the only one who can save humanity. Or option 3, Pacific Rim from 2013. As a war between humankind and monstrous sea creatures wages on, a former pilot and a trainee are paired up to drive a seemingly obsolete special weapon in a desperate effort to save the world from the apocalypse. There are no wrong choices, but make the most correct one, Dustin.
Ooh, there are no wrong choices. This is just in my wheelhouse. It's like we created Dustin Week.
Yes.
What an awesome selection. There was never any doubt. As soon as you said Pacific Rim, it beats everything else. This is what we got to cover. I'm excited about next week.
Jaegers, kaijus. Yes, I'm down for it.
Weird mind links. We'll get to it. John, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank y'all for having me.
And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution is much appreciated and will go towards making this show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Chad?
My parents can't be spies. They're not cool enough.